Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to Rooh Podcast. Today I have Vaishali with me. And thank you, Vaishali, first of all, coming in the studio. And would you please tell our listeners about what do you do, about the beautiful ways you serve our community?
Hi, Prableen. First of all, thank you so much for everything that you do. I love your podcast myself, and thank you for having me here. What a wonderful opportunity to connect and connect with everyone else. So, I'm a registered clinical counselor. I am also a kinesiologist. I practice mental health services and deliver mental health services at this time. My services revolve very much around helping people navigate difficulties like depression, anxiety, transitions in life, difficulties that they may be having in relationships. I do individual couples counseling as well as family support services and family counseling. So there's a lot that goes into counseling and there's very different types of services involved. And the type of practice I uphold is one that creates a safe space for people to come in and share their experiences, but also to learn about their human journey and human experiences and how to navigate that better.
And Vaishali, you come from this spirituality base, and we have talked before, and I also want the audience to know that. So, would you like to start our conversation with some grounding?
Yes, absolutely. So maybe we can take a moment to connect inside ourselves. We'll do that now by closing our eyes. Breathe your body and simply just connect to your breath. Right now, you are here. You are in the present moment. You are living as an experience of yourself. You are not this mind, not this body, and not the emotions. You are the greater energy of life, having and creating an experience right now. We start here by this knowledge and by connecting to our hearts at the center of our chest. Here lies your consciousness, the light of yourself that shines into this physical reality. We connect and surrender to our hearts, for this is the very center of our experience. Now feel the space around your body at the same time, and let this light of yourself shine into the space. Feel the presence, the stillness, the silent energy. Feel yourself as awareness, as empty open space. Now slowly come back to the heart and bring yourself back and open your eyes when you are ready. Thank
I
you for
feel
that.
amazing. Yeah, thank you, Vishali, for guiding us through that. And while I wanted to talk to you about emotions, audiences are South Asian families and immigrants who have moved here. So I was like doing some research on the stats, right? So how many people have moved here and what is going on? So the stats right now are, I wanted to share with our audience is that so about 1.4 million people of Indian ethnic region have moved to Canada. Okay, that's only in Canada, and together between US and Canada is 5.2 million people. Okay, so that's a lot of people who have moved, and that is the only stat in 2021. So imagine even from 2021. So we have increased so much population. But the sad part is, Vaishali, there was no research done on the anxiety and the stress. Okay, because I was looking on what kind of stats or how we deal with stress or how many people are suffering. And the research shows that because not a lot of people come forward or go to doctors or go to therapists, so we do not have the stats. So that is one of the thing I feel like we have to address right now is like, why don't we come forward? Why do you think that's the case?
I think there's a few reasons. In our culture and community, I think there's been a big practice of spirituality built in from the very beginning. So there was a reliance first on spirituality. But as we moved away from that, people disconnected from themselves. And so even though it was built into the system, it was never really practiced much. And it became more about religion than about connecting to our own selves. And I think itself, religion is really a positive thing, but I think we get lost in it sometimes. We get lost in the intricacies of what we should do and what the guidelines are, but we forget to feel our heart. We forget to actually follow what our intuition says, what our heart is saying to us. I think that's one part of it. The second part of it, I think, is that many people in our communities, we follow more of our unconscious or subconscious mind patterns. We don't actually listen again to the guidance coming in or to go beyond the scopes of what society has built to actually experiment and see and observe what feels right. So there's a system that's built in place, and that system is supposed to guide you, but not to hold you captive. And I feel like it's starting to hold us captive. And so there's patterns that we rely on rather than anything else. So the subconscious mind becomes very active. And then I think over time, there has been a version of what's accepted, and it becomes really difficult to talk about mental health or anything related at the home environment, in the home environment. And these are not conversations that we're having at the dinner table, right? These are conversations that we're not having with our children. These are conversations that are not happening in our communities because there is a fear that's built in around mental health, as if discussing it will make it worse, as if discussing it will bring out things that we can't handle, as if hiding and suppressing it will come across as a solution, and avoidance is a solution at times. But I think there's only so much distraction and avoidance we can do before things come to the surface, and they're very loud when they do, finally. It's like
Yeah.
holding a balloon underwater, and finally it comes out because there's so much pressure, right?
Yeah. So,
So
what kind of reactions do you see from people if we keep on suppressing, like we are just talking about? Like, who do we become?
yeah. So over time, as we continue to suppress, hide, run away, deny, avoid all these things, these are strategies that are very ineffective. So in the end, what happens is we become very disconnected. Sometimes we dissociate, right? We try to forget about things, but they come back to the surface. They're impacting us in deeper ways. Clients of mine have shared with me that they can no longer keep it inside, or that they have nobody in their life that they can rely to, and they don't know who to turn to. They don't know what to do anymore. They feel lost. Sometimes it shows up as inability to focus, concentrate, inability to have a good relationship with another individual, because if you're disconnected from yourself, you're going to be disconnected in relationships with others too in life. So it shows up in all aspects of our lives. And that's why I say becomes louder. So I see it showing up in a lot of different ways, affecting our work, affecting our personal lives and our relationships, affecting the quality of our living, basically.
Yeah. And we talked about feeling lost. And so, what kind of emotion shows up? Are we angry? Is it fear? What kind of emotions show up in the people, like people who come in it to see you, the clients? Like, what kind of things they're suffering with?
Yeah, yeah. So in the South Asian community, there's a whole slew of things that we deal with. I'll talk about some of them. One of the major themes that comes up is difficulty in relationships. That's one of the major themes. Difficulties and challenges in interactions in our relationships. And I think it stems again from that primary relationship not being built, our relationship with ourselves, because that should be the basis of every single other relationship, really. Emotions that are experienced, I think there are also all sorts of emotions, because every single emotion is experienced probably for every single human in different ranges and in different types of areas of life and in different events. They surface, right? But I see anger, I see sadness, I see anxiety surfacing quite a bit. Anxiety is this overwhelming feeling, right? And depression and sadness is like to depress something. to make lower the energy. It's this void emptiness feeling. I
Mm.
don't have something that fulfills me. And that again is a disconnection from self and other and from life. And then I see anger showing up. Anger is the energy that shows up when we can't change something we feel like in our lives. And so anger is trying to push us towards change. Emotions themselves are inherently all good. I always tell clients they're all good. None of your emotions are actually bad, but we categorize them as good and bad or positive and negative. I would rather just categorize them as functional or non functional. So either they're serving a function that's supportive, or either they're not serving a function and they're not unsupportive to you, right? So they're non-functional. But inherently, every single emotion is giving you feedback into your human journey, into your experience, so that you can better build it if you use it like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, Vaishali, you want to talk about stigma. Okay. We also have stigma around, especially depression. First of all, we don't agree, especially in the generation of our parents or grandparents. They don't get what depression is. They're like, you are making an excuse. Okay. 90% of the time, we do not get it. And our generation who gets it still has a stigma of, okay, what if somebody knows? What would they say? So, how can we take a step out of that shell we're in right now?
I feel like eventually stigma or the fear of therapy, even, right? We're talking along the same grid of things. It shows up. I see it. But also, I see that it hits a climax point where life pushes you to the point where you're like, if I don't do something about this, it's really going to impact, right? So, stigma is there. But I think life has a way of helping you move through it. If you take that opportunity sooner, you get help sooner. If not, then you resist against it, which is okay too. I have no judgment, right? But it is a journey, right? So, how we can work with stigma is to understand and start to observe our mind. If we actually took the time to reflect at our experience and looked, okay, I've been doing this, it's consistently not worked. And so I haven't tried something new. Can I explore that? What's the harm? What's the benefit? If we do that kind of observation and rationale and we look into the human experience, we can move through it. But often we don't do that because fears are popping in. And the fears actually keep us stuck, right? Because fear is a circular energy. It takes us back to the very beginning. You think you're running from something, but you're actually just running in a big circle, ending up exactly where you started. And stigma is a part of that. It's the fear response kicking in. And it keeps us either in a freeze response where we get stuck, or it keeps us in a fight response. I see that less and less in people, or it keeps us in the flight response, avoidance, procrastination, not taking action, fleeing from the situation, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And also, Charlie, what do we want to say to the people who have moved and left their roots? I feel like that's also a big part of it, which we do not recognize, is leaving your home behind and trying to settle into a new country. Although the newness we like, but I feel like it's not talked about that actually that it impacts us. We're just ignoring that part. So what do you want to say about that?
Yes, yeah. Actually, I have quite a few new immigrants and newcomers reaching out sometimes and saying that it's been a difficult and challenging journey. And I can relate, right? I came here as a 10-year-old child and I saw that there was a lot of things to adjust to, the weather being one of them, the way of life, culture, how we operate, what we do here, our daily routines. Everything is so different. And so you're adjusting to a whole new level of being, basically. You're adjusting to a new way of life and you're finding your new identity here, essentially. So it's a lot to uptake and it takes time. So I think one thing is to give yourself some time, give yourself grace. A lot of people I've heard say, "Wait, I've been here for 6 months or I've been here for 2 years and I still feel unsettled." And I always say it takes longer than that because one, you're growing, right? You're growing and evolving as a human. And two, you're going into a new place and you're changing and shifting from this old version of yourself and this old life and old identity.
Yes.
So, one thing is to give yourself time. And I think even today, I forget to wear the jacket because I see the sun shining outside, which is a common theme that happens back at home. But so there is that mental adjustment, emotional adjustment, physical adjustment. So give yourself some time and grace and really start to incorporate things in your life that help you to adjust. So what helps you feel at home? Is it making your room a different color? Is it bringing in some plants into your home? Is it going outside, connecting to nature, doing a call every day to family? Incorporate these things. They will make the journey a lot easier. But yeah, it will take time. And at some point, you'll look at the journey and you'll go, oh, yeah, I adjusted and it'll be there. Right. But give yourself that grace.
I agree with that completely because we've all been through it, right? I came here when I was 19 and I was in Kamloops. So although you say, oh, yeah, I'm going to the new university and I'm going to do this, although there's so much excitement. But yeah, like we talked about, is the weather. It was so cold there. So I had to adjust with the weather and culture. Although, of course, we know English and people were assuming, like, how do you know English? I'm like, we go to English schools there, buddy. That's not a problem
Yeah.
for people to understand it here. But like still like people here would work in groups. I was the only international student. So all the other kids will work in the groups and I did architecture. So nobody, else was with me. And during that time, we had only 7 students in the whole semester from India. So it was kind of like hard to connect like with people from India or finding a group. So yeah, so like you said, it's time. It took me some time. Like every year I would go back home. I'd just call my parents. And then another thing, I didn't know that in Canada we get seasonal depression. I
Yeah.
was completely unaware of the fact of the seasonal depression. And then until 10 years later, when my husband is, you become like so bad in the winter. I'm like, he's like, you have like depression. I'm like, what? I don't think so. He's like, yeah, you just completely change, right? And then
Yeah.
I would go every December. I would be like, Mom, I want to come to India. So I would go. Right. And I went, I think, for 4 or 5 years straight. I'd go back home, I'd feel refreshed and come back. And I'm like, okay, now I'm okay. I saw the sun. So that, and then after that, like you said, I got used to it. I planted my roots here after study when I started my job and started my family, have kids. So I felt more rooted and more grounded here. And that's where I feel like I started more evolving and growing. But before, when I did not realize what was happening, I was lost. I was completely lost. Even in my studies, I would be distracted, or even in my relationships, I didn't know actually if it was the right decision, first of all. So finding independence of your decisions, that you've made the decision, now you've got to live with it. Because when you live with your parents, it's completely different, right? They are guiding you. They are your guide. You talk to them and all of that. But here you are on your own and you have got to make the decisions. And another thing, Vaishali, here is the financial aspect, which we do not realize. Back home, it's a lot easier because you have a cushion. You have your parents. I know we're talking about emotions, but I want to bring up the subject of credit. Okay. A lot of people are not even aware that how important is to build credit, and they
Yes.
lose it and then they suffer. So I've seen so many students suffer through it, and when we do not pay attention to these things. So yes, coming from India to here, it's like jumping in cultures, but we're adjusting to so many things. There's so many aspects of it, like relationships, like finances, and this and that. So, and then I feel like dealing with all of that, we kind of don't know, like, why are we angry or why are we frustrated or what are we doing? So, when people come therapy and they talk to you, so how can we process these emotions, Vaishali? First of all, I talked about so many things here about the international students and the people who move abroad.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up really great points, actually. And you're right. Finances are absolutely important. They impact all parts of our life and journey here. And as an international student, there's a lot of pressures. There's a lot of pressures. I worked previously also at the hospital, and there I would see a lot of international students struggling because they constantly felt like there were pressure from the family, but also they had their own internal pressures on them. Right. And then they're also adjusting to life. It's a lot to deal with. And finances are tight because they've worked hard to get here. And now they're studying, and often they're also going to work at the same time. So it's a lot. And I think there's a few things that we can do to navigate it where the stress doesn't become overwhelming. So I'll share some tips. We talked about the sun. We know how important it is, right? Sunlight is very limited here. When it comes, we're absolutely blessed. And when it comes with heat, it's even more of a blessing. Okay. So we should absolutely be banking on those days, going out, getting the sunlight when we have it, make use of it while you have it. It really preps you for the fall and winter, like you mentioned, seasonal affective disorder, SAD. That's an experience that a lot of people go through that come from areas where there was a lot of ample sunlight. So one is to use it when you have it. The other is in taking vitamin D. I can't stress enough how important that is. I did a research study one time in one of my degrees when I was doing my second degree. And basically it was a class of environmental carcinogens. So how does the environment impact us and create these toxic havoc states inside our bodies that then are leaning us towards gene expression change in our bodies that create disease? In that class, I specifically did an investigation on how vitamin D functions in our bodies. And what I discovered was pretty amazing. Our vitamin D in our bodies acts basically like a light bulb. Okay. So it turns on many different functions in the body. And so many pathways in our bodies are needing vitamin D to complete themselves. And so if you're not having essential enough vitamin D, you're going to limit the health of your body, the vitality of your physical body. And your emotional and your physical body's health is very tied, right? Emotions impact the physical body way more than the other way around, actually. Physical body will impact your emotions, right? So if you exercise, going out, doing a walk, these are great things to also incorporate, which I would say to everyone, we should be getting at least half an hour of physical activity a day. But if you look at the bigger scheme of things, when emotions become powerful, they impact our physical body way more than the other way around. Okay. So we have to really manage emotions, and there's other techniques that we can use as well. So we need to process, like you said, how do we process these emotions? Getting sunlight, eating your vitamin D, drinking enough water will replenish you, getting some activity. These are great ways. And then there's emotional processing. Okay. Emotional processing can be done in therapy, but it can also be done by you really sitting with life and becoming a student of yourself and a student of life. If you just sit with yourself and start to investigate what is the emotion rather than submerging in it and getting carried into it, okay, which is okay too. You'll do that initially. But if you do this practice over time, you'll develop the skill of just standing back and observing, like standing back and observing the water from the edge of a bank. When you do that, you start to actually see the emotion for what it is. It's a transient experience. It will come and go always. It's never going to be status quo and the same, and it will pass, right? So the big thing is to ride it out. So as you process emotion, the thing is to understand it. Why is it there? What is it telling me? Why has it come now? Right? Become curious about yourself. Become curious about this emotion. That can help us process it better, become the observer and the witness, but also become the student of life itself. So these are some tips I would say.
And I've heard like naming the emotion. Like you also, yes, like observing, but like, what am I feeling right now? I also sometimes teach of touching that body part of where you feeling that emotion. Where is it coming from? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, naming the emotion will help you process it because as emotions might be like there's thousands of different emotions, even in the same category. So the emotion of losing a best friend is not the same as losing your job, right? So they're different experiences, and you're going to hone in on what exactly am I feeling. And then after naming it, there's ways of about, okay, now what? Now what to do with it? And I think if we just sit with it, right? Feeling the body part is essential because it helps you with the somatic work. Because like I said, emotions become it becomes part of your physical body. So it does impact your body. So sitting with that area or even tapping it, right? There's actually points in your body that you can tap, which really help to process emotion. And these points are linked to your hormones. Your hormones are really important when it comes to emotions because they're the physical manifestation of emotional energy in your body. And emotions, of course, are not just in the body, but they're also expressed outwards, right? But in the body, your hormones are the intersect. So actually sitting with yourself and tapping in certain locations, like this area in particular, this area, or this area, these things really help as well to process emotion and then really feeling where is it showing up because there are points in your body where the emotion will show up and be strong than others, especially in the midsection, I would say. There's a lot of processing to be had there.
For sure. And also, Vaishali, like, how do we sometimes, like, I want to ask about responding than reacting, right? You were in a conversation with somebody, like, right now we were talking about sitting alone and processing our emotions, but sometimes we're in a conversation or we are in an argument and we want to say things to hurt people. So, how do we come back from that?
So I always say that there are different parts of your human journey. And if you're going to be hard on yourself when you're experiencing something, it's going to get much worse because I think the world is hard enough on us sometimes and we're taught to be hard on ourselves. We have to learn kindness, right? So when you see and observe a pattern of behavior, it's important to become aware of it first. So you have to observe and witness it, see it. Then once you become aware of it, you have to make a decision. Am I ready to work on it or not? Sometimes you will be, other times you won't be, right? Sometimes we just want to vent and maybe we're in that stream, but if we're ready to work on it, it will show up as, okay, it's here and it's not changing. Let's say we experience jealousy, right? If we experience jealousy, it's telling us something. Envy is also telling us something. Jealousy is telling us we want the experience that the other person has. Envy is telling us we want the experience that the other person has, but we think we can't have it, right? So when we look at that, there's blocks in our path that are creating that thought pattern. Okay. So that thought pattern is a result of deeper thoughts. Maybe we think we're not good enough. Maybe we believe that we're not the creator of our own journeys. Maybe an outside force has to help us, right? There's things that are holding us back. And so the process of looking at ourselves and trying to sit with it is important. But the process of being kind with ourselves while this experience happens is even more important. And you have to remember that there's a human that you have, and you were given this human at the beginning of life. It's going to have patterns. Some you're going to pick up as the life progresses, and that's your patterns, right? But some patterns will be there ingrained in your generations. And there will be that lineage that kicks in that will also have some patterns that show up for you. So there will be strong patterns showing up, and you have to be remembering in that moment that I have a human who's struggling. I'm not the human. I have a human. And you're the greater intelligence and the energy of life showing up for this human. So with that compassion and kindness, we can shift things.
Yeah.
That's what I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, from that, I'm remembering something. It's soul has a body, not the body has a soul. We tend to see it otherwise, right?